today for our October Lunch and Learn, our Children's and Women's Research Lunch and Learn. We are thrilled to be able to showcase qualitative research this month. Our speakers today are Julia Santana Parrilla, who is the Qualitative Methods Specialist and a KT Knowledge Translation Coordinator at the Women's Health Research Institute. She gravitated towards social, structural, and systemic determinants of health during her sociology degree. By the end of her degree, she was working on qualitative research projects. She went on to complete an MSc from UBC's School of Population and Public Health, where she focused on honing her methods, skills, including qualitative, community-based, and knowledge translation. While Julia worked with the WHRI as an independent on multiple projects through her MSc, she formally joined our team in 2022, and we are so grateful. And Asla is here. Asla completed her BA in sociology, lots of sociology happening here, and psychology at UBC, and her MA in sociology at SFU. During her MA, she has been interested in violence and worked with women who experience intimate partner violence and interviewed them on their help-seeking behaviors. She's also currently working as a qualitative methodologist and clinical research coordinator at the Clinical Research Support Unit at BC Children's Hospital Research Institute. She's been trained in qualitative research and has experience in supporting clinical and community-based research. And she's been working with various departments at BC Children's to lead and support qualitative research. And when she's not doing qualitative research, she loves traveling, skiing, and exploring the beautiful landscape of British Columbia. And it is a beautiful landscape. I hope everyone can appreciate these gorgeous fall colors that are coming through today, and the sun that's shining. In honor of that reference to our beautiful British Columbia, I'd like to acknowledge myself as an uninvited guest on the unceded ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And just remind us all that as we are folks within the health system, which has harmed Indigenous people and Two-Spirit people, that we do have a due diligence to look at our calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, as well as the In Plain Sight report. And so with that, I will pass the mic over to Asla and Julia. Let's see if our audio is working.
Okay, is it working? Testing.
We see your slides. If you want to move into, wonderful. And we can hear you both.
Great, okay, great. We're doing it. Yeah, what's happening?
You're doing it. Welcome.
Yeah, so thank you for being here today, and thank you for the beautiful introductions, Nicole. And today we are here with Julia to talk about demystifying qualitative research. But before we do that, we would like to do a land acknowledgement.
Myself as a white settler of Spanish heritage, I'd like to acknowledge the role of my ancestors in colonizing what we currently conceive of as the Americas, and mine in the accountability for ongoing harms. I came to so-called Canada when I was almost 12 years old, landing among the lands of the Blackfoot, Plains Cree, Métis, and Stoney nations, currently known as Edmonton, Alberta. And I moved to so-called Vancouver in 2011 after finishing my undergraduate degree in sociology. It is with sincere humility and reverence that I live among the unceded and ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, Still, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
Thank you. And the reason why I do like the acknowledgement is that I was born and raised in Turkey, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to live, learn, and work on these lands. And it is important to recognize that these lands were never ceded or surrounded by the host nations, making our occupation of these lands really complicated. That is why it is especially important to acknowledge that BC Children's and Women's is located in the unceded traditional territories of Coast Salish peoples, including Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil.
All right, so today our goals are to kind of give a general overview of what qualitative work entails within health research, and also scope out your areas of interest and curiosity concerning these methods such that we can inform a series moving forward, because there's just no way that we can cover everything that is able to be done with qualitative research in 45 minutes. So please engage with us throughout this time that we have together. We will be covering these bullet points and address any questions that may emerge in our time together today.
So here's us. I know Nicole did a beautiful introduction, but I'm Asli. I'm the qualitative methodologist and clinical research coordinator at Clinical Research Support Unit at BC Children's Hospital Research Institute.
And I'm Santana Parrilla, and I'm the qualitative methods specialist and KT coordinator at the Women's Health Research Institute.
So I'll talk a little bit about myself. It will be really redundant at this point, but I did my BA at SFU in psychology and sociology, and then I realized that I was really interested in sociology. So that's why I decided to do my MA in sociology at SFU. And I have experience in supporting and leading clinical and community-based research. And I support various departments at BCCHR, at CRSU, and I lead a lot of qualitative research. And when I'm not doing qualitative research, I enjoy traveling and skiing, and you can see the beautiful landscapes of Turkey there. So here are my services that I offered at CRSU. So I do qualitative research facilitation and coordination, so which includes qualitative support on protocol development, study design, supporting qualitative section of REB applications, qualitative data collection and analysis, trainee training and support, budget support, and grant facilitation in collaboration with Dr. Dawn MacArthur's team, and knowledge translation, which includes supporting manuscripts and presentations. At the Clinical Research Support Unit, we offer qualitative research support on post-recovery basis and free one-on-one consultation regarding qualitative research. So how can you access that? So if you have any requests for qualitative research, or if you have any further questions, how we can support you, you can always email me from the email there, or you can always email our CRC admin.
All right, this is me. I won't cover what Nicole already covered because redundant. But I have over a decade of qualitative research experience, and much of that has been community engaged, as qualitative research often necessitates personal engagement and relationship building, since it is such interpersonal and relational work. I have a long-standing relationship with BC Women's. It started when I was a volunteer on Evergreen, and I maintained that position straight through my master's degree. I was there for about almost a decade, and I really enjoyed it, and that's kind of what drew me toward women's health research in particular. I dedicated my master's thesis to addressing anxiety and depression during pregnancy. And so kind of my areas of interest other than qualitative research are kind of mental health equity and reproductive justice. But generally speaking, I would characterize myself as being multi-interested and value-driven. So I can get really invested in all matter of what, but I'm very invested in the how of things. And beyond work, I enjoy experimenting in the kitchen, talking nonsense to these beautiful felines, and doing nothing with good company, which includes that of my almost 1.5-year-old child. So much like Asa, my services encompass those that are circled here. The rest, all of these bubbles represent the services available at the Women's Health Research Institute to facilitate research. Basically, my mission is to bolster a qualitative research infrastructure at the Women's Health Research Institute, and I do this by consulting on proposals that include mixed methods, qualitative, community engaged, and integrated knowledge translation methods. And I provide support to teams throughout the ideation and design of projects through to the analysis, interpretation, reporting, dissemination, and evaluation of projects. No? And you can access me through my email. I just ask that you include this information so we can kind of hit the ground running together.
So today we're curious to know what experiences you have with qualitative research.
And again, because we want to inform more sessions moving forward, we want to know what you want to know about qualitative research. So maybe we'll have a couple of minutes here. You can pop your answers in the chat. Hopefully you feel inclined to, knowing that, you know, we will account for what you contribute in what we offer moving forward, and also be able to address some of these things in our time together today. And otherwise, we're just going to sit here in awkward silence for about a minute.
You guys have questions in the chat. Can you see them?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Ooh, we have a lot coming through. I love it.
And this is it.
This is great. I'd love to be able to like save some of these questions too. I don't know whether in the back end we can download them, and that way we can reference them when we're moving forward as well. Okay, great. Yes, we can save these. Okay. Where would you like to begin? Should like
I think in some of them regarding the analysis and the processes, we will go into that. And we have one big slide dedicated to community engaged research, and that's where my passion lies. So I'm just really excited to talk more about that as well. And we will also talk, I don't think we included any what software that you can use, but we can just mention them and be talking about it. And if there are any questions that are not answered during our presentation, we can look back and address them. Now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We've also left some time at the end of the session, so we can also, you know, if anything is left unaddressed, we can address it. Or if new questions kind of come up based on what we've shared, we can address them then. It does seem like a lot of these questions have to do with kind of like, I'm new, or I'm just getting started and I don't necessarily know where to start or how to fortify what I do, and how to embark on these endeavors with confidence. So hopefully we can address that a little bit today. Otherwise, please reach out to us because we're here for you. We're here for this purpose.
So, yeah.
All right. So why qualitative research? So while quantitative methods are really adept at answering what, when, where, qualitative research can approximate us a little bit more to understanding the human elements of why and how, why things happen, how people make decisions, and it can inform descriptions of complex phenomena while accounting for personal experiences with those phenomena. It's also very well suited to integrated knowledge translation and implementation evaluation precisely for these reasons.
So what are the steps to develop qualitative research? What does this process look like? So same as quantitative research, you will start by identifying your research questions and your study objectives, and the slides are back, okay? And then you will start doing your literature review, basically finding out existing knowledge about your study to identify the significance of your study, to develop the background information. It is also possible to specify your research questions while you're doing your search during literature review. But usually that is how it would go. You would have one interest, and then you would do an existing knowledge analysis, and then you will kind of specify your focus. Then you will determine which qualitative methods you would like to use that is appropriate for your study. And after that, you will start developing your research design by defining your sample, developing your recruitment strategies, creating your data collection, analysis plan, which we will talk more about in the following slides. This is just an overview of how the process might look like.
All right, generally speaking, in qualitative research, we account for our research philosophies. So research philosophies are extensions of our personal values and beliefs relative to our research. As researchers, we hold a lot of power in determining what gets researched and then what gets prioritized as a result of that research and how it gets communicated. And all of this is based on what's important to us and framed by our worldviews. So it's commonplace in qualitative research to acknowledge the assumptions that we carry through our work, and is best practice to account for them. And so in the succinct words of Cuban French essayist Anaïs Nin, we do not see things as they are, we see them as we are. So as such, it's common practice, best practice, to engage in critical reflexivity of one's positionality, which is our location within our social systems, structures, and constructs, which Asli would speak to more in a second. Reflexivity builds accountability into our research objectives, our research questions, our research methods, and our research populations. Even when engaging in quantitative work, we can benefit from these practices.
So now I will talk more about positionality and how it relates to reflexivity. So positionality refers to the space an individual occupies within society. And it is basically a product of the sum of your identity, beliefs, and experiences. So a researcher's positionality is determined through their identities and how they perceive their status in the world and how others see them. So social position can be based on individual characteristics such as race, gender, age, language, ability, and so on. So your social position influences your personal beliefs, experiences, biases, ideologies, and they will together determine your positionality. So to be reflexive about positionality, researchers must be able to recognize and acknowledge the subjectivity of beliefs and biases that emerge during the research process. So the social position of the researcher to the participant in the study is referred as an insider or an outsider status. So the researcher status with the group they work with can be critical in determining research project success level and how the results will be interpreted. So if you're an outsider, it is important to understand the need for cultural sensitivity, humility, and ethical engagements, and building meaningful collaboration and trust with communities and researchers. It is important because then that will ensure that you're conducting ethical and respectful research. So you have to understand your positionality as an outsider, and you have to consider all these foundational steps to make sure that you're conducting an ethical and respectful research. So even though being an insider has many advantages, such as making collaboration, building trust, and forming meaningful relationship, being an insider will make these things easier for you. it is still important to account for positionality in both circumstances. So even if you're an outsider or an insider at the beginning of your research, but also while conducting your research. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk research paradigms. Basically, they can provide a framework to guide all research decision-making. In essence, in qualitative research, we set forth our paradigms to then align everything else so that we can build a defensible body of knowledge. So starting with ontology at the top here, it asks, what is reality or truth? And it's quite a binary framework where you have, there is one set reality, realism, or there are multiple realities, relativism, basically, each individual person has their own version of reality. Moving towards epistemology, it asks, how can I know reality? Or what constitutes truth? And although there are many epistemologies, these are kind of three overarching ones. You have objectivism, which is aligned with realism and asserts that one objective truth exists. In health research, we often talk about positivism. Constructivism and subjectivism, more aligned with relativism. Constructivism asserts that reality is constructed and relational. And subjectivism, reality is projected. So you can see with these epistemologies why reflexivity is something that's commonplace in qualitative research practices. Axiology asks, what do I value? And methodology asks, how can I acquire understanding of reality? And this is not to be confused with methods, which happens often. Methods are the tools used to, in pursuit of knowledge, whereas methodologies are the rationale behind research design choices.
So community engaged research, and I'm really excited that it was asked in the chat as well. I'm really excited to talk about this in general. And there are different words that you can do: participatory engaged research, participatory action research, and community engaged research, I think, is a term that can cover a lot. So I want to talk about this foundational step that I think every research should follow while conducting research. Everyone should follow, but specifically while we are conducting qualitative research. So community engaged research involves reciprocal and respectful relationship building with the community that you're working with. So it is important that you co-create knowledge and build capacity with the communities that you're working with, and invite your communities to co-create those knowledges with you. So the participants that you work with belong to a community, and they need to be represented respectfully every step of your research. So the participants are the reason why we can actually conduct these researches at the first place. So nothing about them without them. So what does this process look like? So the first step in community engaged research is building trustworthy relationships. So strong relationships are the bedrock of community engaged research, and those relationships are contingent on effective communication, ongoing transparency, and following through your commitments. And the second process to consider is capacity building, which means to have the required skill set and knowledge to empower active participation from communities and effectively address their needs. So benefits and reciprocity involve having a mutual benefit, and there's a shared responsibility between the researchers and the participants, but you always need to prioritize that the community and your participants are the main benefactor of your research outcome. So the third process to consider is accessibility, which is basically examining what kind of barriers may be for your participants from the community to fully or partially participate in your research. So for example, are there available resources that can help sustain their involvement from the community? How much honoraria, how much reimbursement are you giving them? Are there enough support for food or travel or childcare? And is the study space that you're conducting the research, is it safe and is it comfortable for your community? And accountability, transparency, and time, which basically means that being clear on the responsibilities of the research. So at the beginning, it is important to clearly state the roles, responsibilities, ownership of data, plans for sustainability, knowledge mobilization, and other issues that need clarity throughout your research. So you have to make sure that you have enough time and resources, and you're transparent about your commitments and how that research is going to look like. So considering ethics and values. So which basically means establishing clarity about principles of what is right and what is wrong within the interaction between researchers and your participants. So in research that I'm pretty sure everyone at the hospital it spans diverse cultural, geographic, socioeconomic, religious, or other contexts. So it is really diverse, that the research that we are doing. And conceptions of what is right and wrong is anything but universal in those circumstances. So it is important to follow through communities' understanding of ethics and make sure that they're clearly represented in your project. So for example, respecting cultural integrity, discussing the potential risks and benefits, and recognizing that research has capacity to inflict unintended harm on your community or participants. So you have to make sure that you protect your participants' confidentiality and privacy at all times, so they feel safe while participating in the research. So considering knowledge dissemination and impact, which is the last process to consider, it basically means that thinking through how research outcomes impact policy and practice changes, active response, and how research can be used by other communities in the future. It is important to involve your community in the data analysis process and knowledge mobilization, because they will know best how to present your results. So now I'll pass it on to Julia.
In quantitative research, terms like rigor, validity, generalizability are used to defend kind of the robustness of results. These are not transferable to the research that, engages and explores personal perspectives as qualitative research does. For decades, qualitative researchers have been kind of humming and hawing over what are the criteria for trustworthiness. Most popular are the requirements established by Lincoln and Guba in 1985, which are credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability. However, those have since been criticized as kind of being a little bit square peg, round hole-ish, trying to make qualitative research fit within the structures of quantitative rigor. And so more recently, researchers have asserted that it is up to us to exhaustively establish the trustworthiness of our work, and that it's done so through aligning our practices with our objectives, our methodologies, and our methods. So some practices to establish and kind of buttress the trustworthiness of our work include memo writing, which is in essence tracking what we do so we can report on it fulsomely and other people can replicate our work. It also is reflexivity in practice. It's a continuous practice in reflexivity wherein we track how our sense making is expanding relative to our work as we engage in it and with our participants. Member checking, it establishes the integrity of our data. So it's very much about making sure that the data that we're working with is true to participants' experiences, or as much as possible. So what that entails is that if you had, for instance, engaged people in interviews, that you would send a clean version of their transcript back to them with the opportunity for them to redact anything, add anything, or entirely withdraw their participation without consequence. And what this ensures is that then your data not only accurately represents what people wanted to say, but also how they wanted to say it. Intercoder consensus is the practice of having more than one person coding the data, interpreting the data. And what that means is that you're integrating more than one perspective in the interpretation of the results, ensuring that you're not baking one person's perceptions and biases throughout the interpretations, making them more transferable to other people's experiences, and accounting for personal positionalities being carried through the interpretations. And triangulation is the integration of 3 points of data, three theories, 3 researcher perspectives, 3 methods, and in essence used to kind of fortify the credibility of your outcomes. All in all, the essence of these practices is to build accountability into your practices, ensuring results meet as many criteria for trustworthiness as possible, while staying accountable to what you wanted to do, how you wanted to do it, and what you learned with the people that you engaged.
So quantitative research has been the dominant method used in research in general, but also specifically at the hospital, where it focuses on what, where, and when. But qualitative research is also becoming really common and used by a lot of people, a lot of teams, a lot of researchers. And qualitative research focuses on how and why questions. So in the following slides, we will talk about how to use qualitative research and how it is a little bit different than quantitative.
Okay, so generally speaking, when you set out to do research, kind of weigh out your options. And depending on what you want to know, you may choose to go for full quality or mixed methods. But in essence, like, do you want to know what, where, when, how, why, a combination? Your decision-making will also be informed by the resources that you have available to you, as well as what's already known or perceived to be true about any given phenomenon. So for instance, you may be interested in understanding menopause hormone therapy access. And you're able to access quantitative data that tracks rates of access to this treatment, as well as the effectiveness of the treatment. However, based on the literature, what you've come to understand is that while efficacy of menopause hormone therapy is high, access is low. And you want to understand why that is. So you have 2 options. You can either go full qualitative because there's enough evidence to suggest that treatment effectiveness is high, access is low, and you want to focus on understanding why people aren't accessing this, and that's the phenomenon of interest to you. Or you can go mixed because while there is evidence to suggest that there's high efficacy, low access, and you do want to lean into understanding why people aren't accessing it, you also perceive that having local quant data can fortify the impact of your investigation, particularly once it comes to like knowledge mobilization. So there you go.
So sample size. So in quantitative research, it is common to have a larger sample size. But in qualitative, it's a little bit different because your sample size will vary based on the methods that you choose, the timeline, and resources you have. So for example, if you're conducting research in a limited amount of time with limited resources, it would be better to have a smaller sample size. And for example, if you're doing a case study, it might be possible that you will have a really small sample size of 5 to 10 people, maybe not even. If you're doing interviews, maybe you will go up to 30, 50. So it really depends the methodology that you choose, the timeline and the resources that you have, and also what you like to focus on. So your sample size can also vary based on when you reach data saturation. So which basically means that data obtained from your fieldwork provide no new insights or new understanding. So when you feel like your conversations are getting repetitive, you're getting similar responses, that maybe means that you reach data saturation and you can stop and start analyzing your data at that point. So it's not only about the number, but it's more about the quality of the data that you have. So yeah, and the research choices and circumstances will basically determine your sample size in qualitative research. So when it comes to qualitative data collection, it is important to select the best method that will help you answer your research questions and capture your study objectives. So we are aware that the most common methods used in qualitative research are interviews and focus groups, as you can also see on the slides. But there are so many more methods to qualitative research that are beautiful methods that I'm just really excited about. And Julie is going to actually talk further about them in the next slide and give so many more examples.
Thank you, Elsa. So, as Elsa mentioned, we can do so much more than just interviews. And here are some examples. So starting with body mapping. Body mapping is a way to explore people's knowledge and perceptions of their relationships with themselves, their bodies, their health, their social environments. And in essence, what's entailed is that you would either provide people with a silhouette, or they would draw their own silhouette, and then within those map these relationships and these experiences. And then the researchers engage them in descriptions of, explaining what they've rendered and why. This is a still from Mapping the Body, which was a project that explored perceptions of how built environments impact health in Cape Town, South Africa. Another option is theater-based methods, in which people are engaged in explorations of their experiences relative to a phenomenon of interest, and then interpret those experiences and put on a theater production where there's high levels of audience engagement. This still is from the Bright Light program, which was put on with young people with cancer, and they presented their experiences as being young people with cancer, their relationships with care providers, with their family members, and within their greater social cultural contexts. Then there's Photo Voice, which is a very visual representation of how people make and project meaning, such as the Nunchaluth Stewardship Photo Voice project, which was in collaboration with UVic, wherein young people were engaged in representing their ideas and insights about taking care of the environment. And then there's broadly arts-based research, which can use any of the multitudes of mediums to engage people in expressing reflections of their experiences. This image is from the Reimaginary project, which was a collage-based project that engaged members of a small town in Finland in co-creating place-based narratives about spatial planning. And the cool thing about these is that they're, in essence, integrated knowledge translation projects, because all of them, their products can be displayed and engaged with broader audiences. Yeah, and much more. And we would love to do some of these things with you in these settings.
So you collected your data, how do you analyze it? So qualitative data analysis looks really different than quantitative data analysis. So it is not a linear process. It is more like a roller coaster that you can see on this slide. Even though qualitative data analysis will look different, in the next slide, I will talk about some of the common steps that you can follow while you're analyzing your data. So I know also in the chat there were a lot of questions about that, and I will try to answer the ones that I saw, but if not, I'm happy to talk about them. We're happy to talk about them at the end as well. So what you should do first. So it is important to select the type of data analysis that you would like to do, because there's so many. And here are just some examples that I would like to talk about that are really common. And so the first step, you selected your analysis, you decide which one. So you can do content analysis, which includes understanding underlying messages and meanings by identifying trends, patterns, or themes. You can do narrative, which is basically looking at how individuals construct and convey stories about their experiences. You could use discourse analysis, which is basically analyzing how language is used in communication and how it shapes realities. You could do grounded theory, which is basically an inductive approach to develop teams based on the data collected from your participants. Or you could use thematic analysis, which is one of the most common types of analysis used in qualitative research, and I'm a big fan of it. It's a really flexible method in identifying, analyzing, and reporting teams. You kind of let your data speak for itself. And the next step would be, if you chose, well, obviously this will depend on your data collection, but let's say you chose interviews or focus groups, you will start transcribing the audio recordings that you have, and then you will clean your transcripts to prepare them for coding. So the third step would be to familiarize yourself with the data set, which includes reviewing its structure, contents, variables, as well as understanding the context in which the data was collected. So it is important to keep field notes or memo writing while conducting your qualitative data. This foundational knowledge is crucial for effective analysis and interpretation of your data. Then the other step would be to develop your coding framework to do the initial coding. So based on the type of analysis, you can do deductive or inductive. And you can do both. If it's deductive, it is basically looking for answers based on what you already know. And inductive is more of a humble approach where you come to know from the data. So you basically, as I said, let your data speak for itself. So throughout the process, it is important to keep in mind that in qualitative research, you shouldn't expect to predetermine what the results are going to be like. Based on your participants' experiences, based on their perspectives, you might end up focusing on really different things you might not be aware of. And for coding, I think it was asked, please use Envivo. It's a really easy organizing coding tool to use. If you don't know how to use Envivo, please reach out to us. It is really easy to learn. Then you will basically work on your coding based on the agreed coding framework that was developed by your team. So this is important to keep in mind that it's a collaborative process and requires study team to reflect and refine the codes once the coding is finalized. And then you can start developing your teams. So this is like a collaborative, it takes a lot of time process. And the final step is basically reporting your findings, which means making sense of the data collected during your study, contextualizing results, drawing conclusions, deciding how to present the data. So the fun part.
Fun and challenging.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, so ultimately, whether you choose to go full quali or mixed methods, we're all carrying desires throughout our research, right? We want to do something is what kind of compels us to look into things. So to ensure the integrity of these desires and to build accountability into our outcomes, our research philosophies, paradigms, questions, and methods need to be in alignment. So how you represent your research will speak to what your goals were at the outset while accounting for what you learned throughout. Oftentimes in qualitative work, what ends up happening is that you arrive at decisions concerning the representation of results in relationship with what you learned throughout engagements with participants, including data analysis. So as Asli has mentioned, it is like necessarily collaborative.
So here are some key insights that we want to conclude this with. So as we mentioned, qualitative research takes time. So qualitative analysis is also not a linear process. So, and you cannot actually standardize this process. Every qualitative research will look different based on your objectives, based on your questions, based on your methods. It will look different. And qualitative research, as Julie also mentioned, it cannot be conducted alone. So it needs to be a collaborative process with your study team, if your participants, so it's important to keep in mind. But the last and the most important step that we want to mention is that we also talked about during research transfers is that having good research foundations. So make sure that your research team has the required skill set and knowledge to conduct qualitative research. That is just really important, to have experience in qualitative research to conduct qualitative research.
In conclusion, if you aim to inform any changes in the following and or address any of these things, consider going quali. We know that it sounds like a lot, but we're here to help. And so please, if you're considering investigating or aligning yourself and your practices with any of these kind of areas or ways of doing things, contact us. Here is our contact information again. I'll just kind of leave that up, skip this thank you slide. But thank you. And we can get back to questions now. I don't know whether anything new has come up for people in this space. We know that it's been a lot, chucked a lot at you. And it's all very pretty high level. But hopefully this may be an opportunity to check in with one another. All right, let's have a look at this chat. Okay. I'm gonna answer this first part.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so Erica, hopefully you don't mind that I'm mentioning you by name. You asked, how should we think about the generalizability of qualitative research? And how do we ask qualitative type questions when concepts of saturation seem to go against the philosophical underpinning that, we all have unique perspectives and positions. So something to consider is, maybe go, we would talk about the trustworthiness, not necessarily the generalizability. We talk about, how dependable and how credible and how transferable and relevant and appropriate qualitative results are, not necessarily how generalizable they are, because as you mentioned, perspectives and experiences are quite context-based and unique to the individual based on their positionalities and how they are relative to our social worlds and our systems, including the health system. So when it comes to saturation, what it is what saturation speaks to is more so when you're doing qualitative analysis, what you want to arrive at is being able to tell a fulsome story of a phenomenon of interest. So, and the themes of your analysis are what construct that story. So saturation is really just a way to arrive at really clarifying those themes. And within those themes, there's going to be particularities and things that you account for that are person-based, person-centered, but really you want to tell the story, the narrative of the phenomenon of interest. And then you have more of the minutia and the granularity within each of them. Also, I don't know whether you'd like to add
just
that.
one thing that I just want to add is that I think generalizing the result, having so many people in your research, having a large sample size is really coming from a quantitative perspective. But as Julia mentioned, qualitative is about the experiences and perspectives of your participants, and just being transparent when you're reporting your results, just saying that talking about the positionality, talking about the reflexivity, and basically just being transparent about what that was focused, why that was focused, and why you came to that conclusion. Yeah, and you will actually see when you do like a lot of interviews or when you do a lot of focus groups, a lot of people some had different but also similar experiences, and you will start hearing matching teams. And that's kind of what comes with thematic analysis. And when you're doing your initial coding, you will kind of see what you want to focus on, where to stop, when to move forward. So that's why it is also important to like always be in contact with your team and basically decide how you want to present your story, what story you want to present based on the current interviews or current qualitative methods that you collected. What do you have and how do you want to move forward?
Mhm. Okay. Is there a cost for investigators? So this is pretty case by case. It depends on at which point you bring us in. So if you maybe talk to us right at, your design phase, you're putting together a proposal, maybe you're thinking about applying for funding, then we can talk about whether our services will be cost recovered as a budget line item or whether partially be in kind or anything like that. It's case by case, very much so. And then similarly, if we're coming in later, then that very much depends on, the resources that you have available. I don't know whether it's different.
Just one thing at clinical research support unit that we do free one-on-one consultations. And then in that, we basically determine how to move forward, if your study actually needs the qualitative component, how to move forward with the support, how much support you need. So, and then it goes into cost recovery basis. But the first initial meeting where we kind of decide the needs of your project, your study objectives, and how to basically tailor that. That would be in the free one-on-one consultation for CS.
Same.
Oh, that one.
I don't know about that one. Can you give a sense of how much qualitative research is being undertaken at the Institute? I don't know whether whether anybody else may want to take that on. Nicole, I don't know whether you have a sense of that. No.
No, I
Okay.
mean, we do member surveys, and maybe this is just a quick plug. I think our annual report, that could be something that we incorporate in. We do an annual member survey, and we've been trying to kind of call in how people identify as researchers. So that might be something that we can highlight. That's scheduled to go out in December.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. Are there qualitative research SOPs or guidelines available?
We are in the process of developing a website actually, and we want to like put all the services that we offer and also like the resources that people can do. But Nina, she's in my team. Hi. So I am actually happy to help you with that. So, but we are actually in the process of developing a website where we will have these resources. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, same boat. Same boat. At the moment, it's us.
Yes, just email us.
Yeah. I also just recently became aware that the BCCHR has a qualitative research community of practice. So you could also get in contact with us about that, and maybe we could, loop you into those emails and see whether you would want to join any of those meetings. They run monthly on a Thursday.
Oh yeah. That's so one of the questions was helping the questions asked during basically helping with the interview or focus group guides and also helping the analysis. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here for. So if you want to further like specifically talk about your research objectives, we're here.
Yeah, for sure. And oftentimes, if you're curious about what types of like constructing the questions that you want to ask, a good place to start is sometimes in the research. You can see in the like peer review published articles, oftentimes people will include how they constructed their research questions. You can either look in methods journals, or you can look at journals that have conducted qualitative research with the populations that you're curious about and the areas of care that you might be curious about, and see what types of things people ask there. That being said, back to the point of like reflexivity and things like that, just because things have been done a certain way up to this point doesn't mean that they can't be improved upon. and that it doesn't mean that the existing knowledge doesn't carry certain assumptions and things to account for that ourselves collectively can do. And so although going to the literature can be a good first step, we're also here to kind of massage that a little bit more relative to what you want to know, what your goals are. All right. That seems like all the questions that came up at the end there. Okay.
Well, thank you both. We'll make sure that we send you the chat as well. It might be fun to do a little like follow-up blog post or news story with some of the with some of the question prompts and your responses. We really appreciate the two of you. It sounds like there's a lot of work on the horizon in terms of articulating the who, the what, and I also acknowledge the tension though of like, we want an SOP, and then Asli saying nothing is standard. So I cannot wait to see what this menu looks like. You must be very creative folks. So yeah, really excited to see what comes out. And just thank you so much for really making qualitative accessible and relevant. And it makes me excited. There's tons of folks, just really, it seems like curious and interested. So I wish your inboxes, a lot of engagement.
Thank you.
It's exciting. It's exciting. Yes. And someone just asked whether there will be more sessions. And yes, that was part of the impetus behind this one, is to, curate a series so we can get into the nitty-gritty of this, because this is pretty high level, can feel pretty overwhelming, or like you're walking out of here without the tools that you walked in here wanting. So hopefully we'll be able to move forward with that.
Yeah, and I think for folks who kind of attend these regularly, if there's a specific thing connected to qualitative that you're interested in, if you shoot me an email, or Shanli or Ashley, we have a working group on campus that helps inform the topics that get presented at these lunch and learns. But if it is too kind of narrow a focus for a larger group, that's something we can make sure we pass to Asli and Julia if they want to offer more qualitative focused education series in the future. So just know that if you send us feedback, it'll go somewhere. Just TBD on which avenue it goes. Okay, thanks everyone. And November we have Ashley, can you nod for me that I'm getting this right? It's the Right to Participate team coming on in November?
Yes, I think so.
Wonderful. So Monica and Jesse will be coming on in November to provide you with an update. So thanks so much everyone for spending your lunch hour with us. We look forward to seeing you in a month.
Bye.